Medium combat vessels, for when you need something with more firepower and survivability than a fighter can offer but can't justify the expense of a destroyer. Or maybe you want something faster than that lumbering giant. They make excellent patrol craft and skirmishers, but watch out how you use them in larger fleet engagements. Medium craft have their place in the bigger fights, but they are not ships of the line. If you try to go toe-to-toe with a destroyer, they are going to get blown up. Instead, try to think of them as a mobile weapons platform, and what type of weapon system you prefer will determine what type of medium combat craft you'll choose. That's because these medium ships are divided into 3 separate classes. We have corvettes, which have a lot of forward guns, gunboats focus on turrets, and frigates specialize in consumables such as drones, missiles, laser towers, and such. Whichever type of weapon system you prefer will influence which type of medium ship you'll lean towards. These ships will also normally be your first introduction to turrets and boarding. Speaking of turrets, we should talk about how these ratings work. I'll follow the same guidelines as my other video on fighters. Check that out if you want to know more about that. The 2 changes from that are to shields and turrets. All ships are given Talati Mark II shields. There is an Mk3 version available from the Terrans, but they are very expensive and more of a premium item for later in the game when you have the excess credits to spend. The second is turrets, and I'm rating them as half as valuable as a forward gun, as it does less damage than even the Mk1 variant. So with that done, let's get started. Beginning with corvettes, we have the Paranid Nemesis. Holding the distinction of being the very first corvette released, it is the baseline that all other ships of its class are compared against. Because of that, it is arguably the most balanced, although it is superseded by our next ship. The Yaki Kura Okami is the upgraded Nemesis. While overall it's generally better at everything, that's countered by being difficult to acquire. If you want to buy it, you'll have to befriend the Yaki, which requires completing a fairly long storyline mission chain. Otherwise, you're going to have to steal it. And those raiding parties are relatively rare, so it's down to luck more than anything if you're going to get this early. If you want even more guns, we have the Zyarth Dragon. This thing hits the hardest of all the medium combat craft, and the extra hull does help with its survivability. Just be wary of its poor shields, especially if you use the split generators. Now, if you like the idea of lots of guns but prefer evasion as your defensive tactic, then you'll probably prefer the Free Families Dragon Raider. It stripped away all of its armor plating to the point that it has the worst hull, but makes up for it by being faster and cheaper. But it's not the fastest ship around. That title goes to our next ship. The Terran Katana. You're getting this for one reason, and that is because it is fast. This ship can get up to fighter levels of fast. The Katana has become the premier personal combat craft for many players because of that. It has the fewest gun mounts, but can use any weapon in the game, so you can customize it any way you see fit. This is also the only medium combat craft the Sagaris Pioneers have available to them. Something to keep in mind if you're starting out as anyone besides the Protectorate. Having a good mix of speed, firepower, and maneuverability, the Corvette is probably the most popular player-piloted combat ship. It is the most fragile of all the medium ships, but with smart piloting tactics, a good player can effectively negate that downside. I personally prefer the original Nemesis, but will fly the Kura Okami if I can get a hold of one. If you're bigger into guns, take a look at the Dragon or Dragon Raider. And if your need is for speed, look no further than the Katana. Starting off, our gunboat lineup is the Argon Minotaur, and this ship is not good. It is the second cheapest medium combat craft in the game, which helps mitigate its abysmal stats, but I don't think that is enough to make up for it. In isolation, if this was the only gunboat available to you, then it performs fine. But unless you're playing an Argon-only playthrough, it's not. There are others to choose from. Such as the Talati Peregrine. This ship, simply put, is a straight upgrade of the Minotaur. It can do everything better. Its only downside is that it's more expensive. But gunboats are not expendable assets. If losses are necessary, you have your fighters take that hit. So a higher upfront cost isn't as big of a concern. If used properly, they will last longer. If you want to use a gunboat, I can't recommend anything else besides the Peregrine. But that doesn't mean that our next ship is bad, the Protectorate's Jeanne. It's just a more specialized version of the gunboat with 6 turrets and 1 forward gun. All of its turrets are on its upper deck, which means it is also the only gunboat without full 360 coverage. Because of the turret's reduced firing arc and the fact that they don't overheat, outfitting it with plasma turrets and a Maison stream makes the Jeanne a surprisingly effective anti-capital ship. Just remember to support it, as it can't withstand the full attention of a destroyer's return fire. What classifies a ship as a gunboat is due to its dependence on turrets, but how you use it depends on which one you take, either anti-fighter or anti-capital. When using the Peregrine, you may be tempted to set the turret behavior to attack my current enemy, so to focus all of your fire, but doing so turns it into a second-rate corvette. Better to set it to attack all enemies and have it spray bullets in all directions, putting pressure on as many enemies as it can. For the Jeanne, if you go with plasma turrets, then setting the behavior to attack my target would work best. You'll need to focus your plasmas to help counteract the destroyer's shield recharge between your main gun shots. On to frigates, we are going to start with the Argon Cerberus. Before the expansions, this was a favored boarding vessel due to its cheap cost, but it's just bad. There is a much better version of this, but even if that wasn't the case, I would still hate this ship, and it is for one reason only. The launch bay doors are right in front of the cockpit. Whenever you use it, it blocks your view. We are just going to go ahead and get rid of that annoyance. Much like the previously mentioned Peregrine, the Paranid Gorgon is a better version of the Cerberus. I have no idea why Egosoft decided to give the Argon the bottom of the bin when it came to handing out medium vessels. This is a good general purpose frigate if you want to use lots of consumables but don't have a specialization need. Speaking of specialization, we have the Talati Osprey, and this thing is a flying fortress. When they designed this, they definitely got the fortress part right. It has around 20,000 more hull points than over half of the ships on this list, but they forgot to give it enough engines to move it beyond a snail's pace. Still, if you want to use your frigates as a bullet sponge, then look no further than this brick. If you like boarding large ships, then you may like the Cobra. Being able to hold 25 Marines, it's capable of capturing some of the larger vessels by itself. Although, don't try it on destroyers. They tend to carry a lot more Marines, so you'll need to bring backup. Outside of boarding, it is still a very good frigate, although a little bit on the expensive side. But remember that this is a Zyarth-only ship. You're not going to find it with the free families. But the most expensive medium combat craft is the Protectorate's Falx. Even by Terran standards, this vessel's cost is extreme. This ship is what happens when someone takes a katana, then decides it should be able to do everything. While it sacrifices a lot of speed to do it, if you really want a frigate that can do anything, then this is the ship for you. Except for the Falx, the frigates also rely on their turrets, so function as tougher gunboats, but it is their greater access to consumables that sets them apart. With a default capacity of 100 missiles, frigates can shoot torpedoes for ages before needing to restock. Or you can take 100 laser towers and place them in front of a xenon gate. Any raiding party trying to get through that will just end up getting melted. And don't discount the lowly drone. Sending them in as the first wave to absorb the enemy's Alpha Strike could save you a few ships that you would have otherwise lost. There is one last ship to cover, and that is the Minotaur Raider. Available from the Scale Plate Pact or the Haktiva Free League, everyone knows this ship, and depending on which side of the guns you're on, you either love it or hate it. It exchanges 2 turrets for extra storage, which is why it has the worst firepower rating. Even though it only carries 15 Marines, because it is so cheap, it has the best Marine to credit spent ratio. However, you can't actually buy this ship. You have to either build it from your own wharf or steal it. So its cost effectiveness as a Marine carrier unfortunately becomes redundant. So there we go, a quick overview of all the medium combat vessels. Hopefully this helps you out in choosing which ship works best for you. But before we go, if you liked the video or found this helpful, please give a click to all the good buttons at the bottom and share so that more people can see it. Until next time, fly safe.